Welcome to this week's episode of the Horse with No Name podcast. We are in the third week of our Decade in Review project, and we'll be discussing the 2012-13 academic year today. We have a very special guest, but first, my name is Zach Freeman. I'm joined as always by my friend Bob McMichael, and today's guest is none other than Adam Surguine, LBC alum. Adam played 2 years of men's basketball. You might recognize him from his 68 career points, but more importantly, he was the assistant coach for LBC for 6 years on the women's side, including the 2012-13 year when the Chargers won the NEAC Championship and advanced to play in their only NCAA Division III national tournament contest. Adam is currently an assistant coach and video coordinator at NCAA Division I Florida State in Tallahassee, Florida, and he resides there with his wife Amanda and their son Otto. Adam, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm glad you brought the 68 points. They were hard-earned, and the footage is deep in the archives. So
very deep in the archives.
We'll have to dig that up at some point.
That's right. That's right.
Do we have to dig it up? I'm doing well. How are you, Zach?
Good. Doing well. This is
have a good weekend?
Yeah, it was good. Good weekend. Laid back. They're all laid back now. We don't follow sports.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
The tiniest little perk about not having sports. So it's okay. I got some weekends. It's okay. I miss soccer. I think this was going to be a really good year for some soccer. But
hey, good news there. It sounds like Friday Night Lights is actually going to start this week, and
I'm hearing things.
I know that's what I'm hearing too. And
we'll see how it goes.
So we'll see. I won't be able to be there this week, but hopefully maybe we can try and help make that even a really cool experience. And one other little side note, Saturday, this college was able to honor the May 2020 graduates and had a drive-in ceremony. It was unique, it was different, but it was really cool. I think the graduates definitely walked away feeling very special. They got cupcakes as they walked across the stage.
I like that.
I never got a cupcake. Did you, Adam?
No, Bob, you gave me a towel. So
well, they got the towel.
No cupcake.
Yeah, no cupcakes.
A towel and a diploma. No, I'll take the cupcake. Thank you.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, and I was excited for them all. So
great.
Yep,
that's great. So the past couple of weeks, we've kind of gone through each sport through each season. We're actually going to kind of move away from that for this week anyway, and just start with women's basketball. So that way we can talk to Adam about the season. That year, the women's basketball team was 24-5, 16-2 in the NEAC, 16-0 at home. They were the NEAC champions. They beat Wells in the NEAC semifinals, and then CUCA, which we'll talk about with Adam here in a few minutes, in the NEAC final. They also won the East Region final that year, kind of overshadowed by the NEAC win, beating Valley Forge. They did lose them aside in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Had a 10-game winning streak during the season, a 7-game winning streak during the season. Lauren Helger, 16 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists per game. Aubrey Folger, 16 points, 9 rebounds, 3 steals per game. Brooklyn Wilson had 10 points a game. Sarah Heileman had 8 points and 6 rebounds per game. We're going to talk to Adam about this in a second too. Helger, Folger, Wilson, Heileman started all 29 games for the Chargers that year. So not the deepest team in recorded history, but 1 through about 6 or 7 really good players, and definitely one of the best teams we've ever had here in terms of women's basketball, and a really special season. So Adam, just to jump right into it, before we even talk about 2012-13, Bob and I talked last week about the 2011-12 team. Saw you guys win a lot of games at the end of the year. It actually beat St. Elizabeth in the NEAC quarterfinals, then almost upset Poly in the NEAC semifinals. What do you remember about the end of 11-12 setting up 12 and 13?
Well, there was this momentum from that team as the year kind of went on, and it kind of became the DNA of these teams, both in 12-13 and 13-14. There was this toughness to them, and fatigue wasn't really, they didn't let it bother them. It was actually kind of unique to see that, and it was contagious mentality. And I remember a couple highlights or a couple moments that year where I was like, I really think the future is bright. I remember we came from, we played the CUCA on the back end of a back-to-back, and there were some injuries. There were some depth issues with that team, and we played them tough. I can't remember that. I think we lost by like 12 to 15, and they were by far the most dominant team that year. And I remember walking away from that, and I was like, we were depleted a little, but we hung tough. And if I remember correctly, it was a single-digit game till 8 minutes left. Those numbers might be a hair off, but
You're good. 57-43. You're right on the score there, but definitely the second game of a back-to-back.
Yeah, and so it was kind of, we walked away from that like, man, we're pretty close. We're pretty close. And then that back then they were SUNY IT. We had a chance to win that game. I remember there was a very, I won't rehash it too much, a controversial call on a baseline out of bounds that was missed, and that was admitted it was missed, and it was fine. And but it was kind of like, man, we're close here. I think it was a 4-point game, 2 or 4-point game, but it was one of those where you walk away like we're right there. We're right where we need to be. And as every team in the country says when they end their season, we want to carry this momentum into next year. And this team did it going into the following year. And it kind of showed itself pretty early, which was kind of fun.
I can't believe you would suggest officials would make a questionable call.
It happens. It does happen. The thing about that was like they were extremely professional about it. And it was one of those that was like, it is what it is. So you appreciate that. And I mean, we made mistakes during the game too. I mean, that's kind of the end of the day, but they were very professional about it, which is great.
Good.
So the team in 12 and 13, we're 6-2 at Christmas. We had beaten Eastern and actually played Division II Wilmington pretty tough. The addition of Aubrey to Helger, Heileman, and Wilson was large. What did you see there in the first semester that maybe excited you for the second semester and some more potential perhaps the team had? So those first 8 games, pretty good. We did lose to Penn State Harrisburg by 2 on the road there in December, but some good wins, started 4-0, things like that. What did you see?
Well, the number one thing was the Eastern game, because at that time, Eastern was, as a department, was far beyond what we were at the time. And they had handled us pretty good every year leading up to that. And I remember going into that game and, we felt pretty good about ourselves. I wouldn't say we were like, oh, we're going to win this and this, but we thought we were going to be a competitive team, and it was a good matchup for us. And obviously Helger at 29 that night. And I remember sitting in the lobby after that game, and I was like, wow, we just beat Eastern. Like that was, at the time, was a monumental step for our program, because before it was like, oh, let's just hope to stay close. So let's hope to be competitive. And we walked away like, well, we won that game. And that was kind of where it was like, this team's got a chance. We never talked championship. We never talked anything. We just thought, man, we could win some games. And that was kind of a big thing. We very much looked at it as 2 separate seasons, first semester versus second. And that Eastern game, huge momentum going into Rosemont and Trinity, felt good. Obviously handled Wilson. And then a setback at Harrisburg, but it was one of those games where it's like, you just didn't play well.
Mm-hmm.
And Ross does a great job there, but it was one of those, we didn't rebound at all. There were many, many, many offensive rebounds that we gave up that game that ended up costing us. And you're going to have those snags. And but again, that loss is one that we thought was pretty fixable. We didn't ever deal with attitude or effort issues. And so when you have those 2 things and it just comes down to execution, you can clean that up pretty quick. So we felt pretty good. Obviously that the other loss was Wilmington. Again, it was a guarantee game, and we were really, we hung tight with them for a while until they pulled away, and that was on the road.
Yep.
And it was one of those, again, using your eyes, it was like, man, this team's got a chance to be pretty good. So again, all momentum, growing pains. Obviously, as coaches, we're figuring out how to use our depth. We played 7 over 12 minutes. That's it. So trying to figure out how to manage that was a big piece of that.
Sure. And the Eastern game you brought up, Helger scoring all those points, that was 2 weeks after the women's volleyball season had ended. She had just played 40 women's volleyball matches and came in and scored 29 against Eastern. We talked last week about her and her ability to switch sports. We talked about Kevin Keltner a few weeks ago, where they would play these fall sports and just give everything, and then basketball would start and they'd be the best player there too. Just really quick, because we can talk more about her towards the end, because she had several good games like others did on the team too, but just the ability to, at that time, you would know better than I on the numbers, but Heileman played soccer, Helger played volleyball, a couple others played sports too, and all of a sudden, you're starting basketball October 15th with 6 people, and you have to wait for everyone else. How difficult was that on that transition piece before we get to the second semester?
That's a great point. And then Doug and I used to talk about it all the time. Like we could write a book on 3-on-3 drills, because that's all we had to manage. And there's all these seasons, it was a week and a half of full team before we're going. And there's a certain aspect of that was great, because you just got to kind of figure it out. And you don't have to deal with the monotony of a preseason that some teams can run into. Usually about that 3rd week, teams start to get a little antsy because they're just playing against themselves. We didn't run into that as much. And then we used practice guys as much as we were allowed to. That was a helpful thing. But getting creative with those 6 kids that we have and trying to teach and learn And then when we would integrate these other kids coming in, you had to get them up to speed as quick as possible. And they were great. They would come as much as they could to watch and learn and be available. And it was hard too, because you wanted them to be really successful in their other sports, and you wanted them to also be able to join the team as quick as possible. I mean, I think that's being honest. And I think that was a hard thing to strike. And then you also had to give them rest. I mean, they just finished a season in whatever their respective sport was, and you wanted them to play yours, but you also had to know in order to play your sport, they had to rest. And I think I remember Lauren coming off that. It was a weekend they lost, and then she took 2 or 3 days off and joined us on that Wednesday. So if my math is right, she had about 10 practices before the start of the season. That was the first time she touched a ball in months. And that just shows her toughness and how special a player she was. And this team was so great at understanding that. Like, they didn't like fault, oh, you just came from this, and no, they understood roles, and whatever it took for us to be successful, they were about. So
I'm going to break down January for you here
Please.
for a second. So we won 8 of 9 to open January, including a rematch with Harrisburg later in the month. But tucked in there was a win over Cuca, 57-53, if I have it right, or I'm saying it's 58-50. And I reminded myself, we actually played them on a Monday. We were supposed to play either Friday or Sunday, but I'm pretty sure it snowed and they couldn't get here, so we had to play Monday. So this random, I think the men played at 2 and the women played at 4, or the other way around, 4 and 6. And it was this strange Monday afternoon. There was no classes. No one was here. And that game ends up counting as the home court advantage game because they went and won the North Division and we won the South. And then we did finish the month 9-2, loss in there to SUNY IT and then Elizabethtown as well. We won't dwell on those. But talk about really quick the Cuca game, because I'm sure you have memories of that being a kind of a strange afternoon Monday game. Then also through the month, just looking at the scores, there's some great scores in here. 45-31, we won over Gallaudet. 70-45, 49-37. These aren't your grandmother's scores anyway. These are pretty interesting scores. Really good defensive team. Just throughout the month, it's clear the team's coming together. It's clear we have a pretty good hold on the NEAC, but also we're finding ways to win we're just outscoring teams.
Yeah, no, that's there are many games in January you walk away from, you're excited you won, but you didn't necessarily feel like you played well.
Yeah.
But I think that as everywhere we've been over the last 10 years is good teams find a way to win, and they have to win ugly and they have to win pretty. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that statement. And I think with this team, it was very much find a way to do it, and then we'll kind of keep progressing as the year went on. And Doug was so good at he said all the time, and still sticks with me to this day, is never get too high, never get too low. Like, he would tell me it all the time. And it's true in Tallahassee, Florida, as in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I think that was kind of our mentality, was let's enjoy the win. Let's not get too excited that we won. Let's not get too down that we didn't play great in some of those, and then just kind of continue to figure out. And it kind of kept us level headed with this, this solution driven mentality. And I think that that's where the team bought into that as well. I think locker room celebrations were great. We were happy, and then it was immediately on to the next one. And I mean, our schedule has something to do with that when you're playing back to backs, but that was a huge piece. It was like, we're glad we're winning, but we weren't really happy with how we were playing in a lot of those. I mean, the St. Elizabeth game we were pretty happy with, but Gallaudet, that was a little bit of a struggle. And just looking at the scores here, obviously you get to SUNY IT, we were exposed in that one as well. And that actually, to be honest, when you're looking at it, that SUNY IT game was kind of the pivotal point going into, because we wanted to go, you don't want to ever lose a conference game. We thought we were good enough to win them all. And that was kind of that kind of wake up call for the rest of the way.
But yeah, don't you think though, sometimes those losses are really keys for how teams can learn how to bounce back and be better than what they played and what you actually know they can do.
Yeah, no, I think it's the greatest. I shouldn't say the greatest because I don't like it, but it's a really good teaching tool if it's used correctly. And I think there's a reality check involved. I think there's a humility aspect of it where you can say, hey, we think we're pretty good, but we're not. Anybody can beat us, and everybody says it, but I think when you live it, I think it's a little bit different. And for us, it was kind of that we got to get our act together here a little bit and clean it up and kind of continue to get better.
And then February, kind of winding down the regular season. There's some close wins in there. 5-point win over Cobleskill, 3-point win over Valley Forge Christian, 49-46. But then taking care of Wilson, Abington, Berks, St. Elizabeth really start to play well. Beat Valley Forge Christian in the East Region Final. It's amazing to me looking back. That was on a Wednesday, and the NEAC Final Four is Saturday, Sunday. I mean, I guess at the time we just needed to schedule and play it, but it's just amazing. I'm thinking of our coaches now and how that would not fly. Hey, you're going to play a championship game on Wednesday, then we'll give you 2 days to prep for the NEAC Final Four. Anyway, it's just funny to me that that's the way we had to do it back then, because the NCCAA was still important or more important to us at the time, and we played it before the NEAC. Now everything's after the NEAC. But moving to the Final Four, take care of Wells in the semifinals. We won't bring up Wells again, I promise. Yeah. You won't be on next back.
Spoiler alert, they got us back.
So we head into the Final Four, the NEAC final to play Keuka. Before we get to the game, what do you remember about Saturday night preparing for Keuka on Sunday? We had beaten them in the regular season, but they basically ran the NEAC. In the early years of the NEAC. They'd won the previous two. They've got a ton of upperclassmen, good players, Bandrowski and all those good players for Keuka. How did you and Doug and even some of the team, I would assume, prep for the next day?
Well, it was such a unique thing because you brought up those tight turnarounds. We actually played 5 games in 9 days leading up to that. And to think about that in the current landscape is just unfathomable, to be honest with you. It's again a testament to these kids. It was nothing fazed them. The prep going into Keuka, so obviously with the NEAC, with the way it was set up, we had a few days advance on who was going to be in the Final Four. So I remember I'm looking at my notes here, but we had St. Elizabeth to end the regular season on Saturday. That week leading up, we had to prep for Valley Forge, Wells, Keuka, and I can't remember who Wells played. Anyway, I had to do 5 scouting reports in about a day and a half to lead up to that week, because you just don't have to. We had Sunday off. We didn't play till Wednesday, so all day Sunday, pretty much all day Monday, and then Tuesday was kind of all hands on deck, Valley Forge, because we hadn't won that one in forever. The 80s, if I remember correctly, or it'd been a while. My dates might be region? Yes.
Yeah, 03, 04.
03, 04.
02, 03, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously it wasn't the 80s, but it had been a long time since we had won that one, and so that was a big thing. And again, Doug was great at kind of pointing us to one game at a time, one game at a time. Valley Forge game is the only one that matters. We obviously felt we had a good chance going into Keuka, but Valley Forge was the only one that mattered. And so it was this prep leading up to it, and this organization aspect, and it was a whirlwind. There was very little sleep. It was similar to our ACC run this year. It was just very little sleep and a lot of prep. And but the kids were so great at taking on that responsibility of resting. They didn't mess around. They didn't stay up late. They were very, very focused that week on basketball. I remember we met Saturday after that St. Elizabeth game, and we talked like, this is going to be the most important week of your basketball career, and treat it like it. And I was like, basketball, you're not going to get this moment back. You're not going to get these games back, or this opportunity. Like, take advantage of it. Take care of your school, obviously. But outside of that, it's whatever decision you make directly impacts our basketball team in this week. And they bought into that hook, line, and sinker. They were phenomenal. But going into Valley, you feel great. You have momentum. You finally have a championship. We haven't won. These kids hadn't won a championship yet. And then you go into Wells, and obviously it felt good after that one. You won by a pretty sizable amount. After Wells, that second semi was played. We had the scouting report lined up for both teams for that one, but it was basically which one do we print, and then any adjustments Keuka made, and Kate did a great job there. She was awesome, and we'll talk about the game in a minute. I rewatched it the other day for the first time, but it was it was just kind of which one are we going with. And then when that game ended, we immediately went to the locker room and did our scout film, everything leading up to that game. Sunday morning, went to church together as a team in the morning, hit shoot around, and we were ready to go.
And so with the NEAC final, that's terrific, because I remember going to those shoot arounds, and it was both teams. I've been to shoot-arounds before, and both those teams were so locked in. Cuca was so good; they know exactly what to do. Like you said, Katie was a great coach there for a couple of years there, and is still a great coach up there in New York. So it's a tight game, the NEAC final. But and I had forgotten this. I remember it being very, very tight. I remember everything. So we go down by 12 with 14:24 to play on a free throw there by Cuca. We chip away a little bit. It's still 10 with 12 minutes to go. Finally, with about 10 minutes to go, we cut it to 3 on a jumper by Folger and started to build that momentum. But it's still a Cuca lead until 5.5 minutes to play. I'm looking at it right now. Helger hits a jumper with 5:32 to play, put us up by 2. But Cuca retakes the lead. It's tight the whole way through. You must feel good, though, on the bench, despite the fact that you wish you were winning by 20, I'm sure. But the fact that you've got Helger, Wilson, Heileman, who's played a lot of games, Folger's a freshman, but we're talking about the 28th game of the year. You're not a freshman anymore in late February. It must feel good, despite the fact that Cuca's got a ton of upperclassmen too, though, that you feel good about your group going down the stretch there in the final minutes.
Yeah, to go back to like the Eastern game. I mean, from the get-go, you felt this team had something extra in them, and I think you brought up Aubrey. Aubrey was never a freshman. I mean, I think she was never a freshman. She was so skilled, but you felt good about it because there was a couple of cues in that game. They didn't score much early on. We didn't score our first bucket till like 13 minutes in the first half, but they weren't scoring either. They had this dribble drive offense that was really hard to guard, and they actually had to get out of it because they weren't scoring a ton in that. And so we were kind of hanging around, weren't scoring a ton, but we were defending pretty well. In a championship game, there's a few plays you look for that are just kind of extra special. And Sarah had a layup in the first half on the opposite side, on the left side. I still don't know how it went in, and it kind of broke a little bit of a run that they had, and we kept it close at half. This team, everything kind of hinged on how do we come out at halftime, and we didn't come out great, as you saw by the 12-point lead, but we caught that timeout with 14 to go, and you're kind of chipping away. And again, for us, our as you mentioned earlier, like we joke about the low scores, but that was kind of our DNA, and it was defense. And you saw them scoring, you grab the easy baskets. Stop from scoring, take the easy ones. And that was kind of how we approached it, because we weren't hitting threes. Brooklyn obviously did, but if you look at the rest of our numbers, we weren't really shooting it great. And then chipped away till we had the 3 with 6 left. I remember there's a loose ball, and Brooklyn Wilson caught the ball off of her feet and just let it fly. Tie game. I think the gym is one person talks and it's loud, but I never heard that loud in my life. And that was a back-breaking play, I thought. They regained the lead, but it was one that was kind of like, we're here to stay. Megan Williams had a defensive play. Following that was a steal. We didn't score on the other end, but it was kind of like, when you make a big bucket, their team tries to score to try and like neutralize it a little bit or get you out of your run. And she stole that ball, and we just kind of felt really good about it. And then Aubrey had a jump shot following that to kind of keep that thing where we wanted it. Really to that last 30 seconds, it was a back and forth. I remember there was a screen and roll. Sarah Holland came off, and I wish I could pull the video here. I don't know how she caught it. I don't know how she scored it. Like I showed my wife the other night. I was like, I don't know how this play happened. And she had a few of those, but it was again, she caught the ball like looking away and spun and finished like behind. It was amazing. And those little plays add up. And then at the end, their guards were so fast, and all of them had this little dribble spin move that you couldn't guard, because they would go one way and you'd have to cut it off if they score, and they spin off you. And Gravel missed that layup at the end. That thing goes in, it's a different game. But she missed a great play, missed the layup, made the free throw, and then at the end, Brooklyn made those free throws to wrap it up. And she missed the front end. I remember that. They called that timeout to ice her, and I just remember I was like, just shoot it. Like, just shoot it. You don't want to put extra pressure, but like, the whole championship rides on this free throw. But it was one of those where it was like just big play after big play after big play, and they weren't necessarily pretty, but they were just gritty plays that got it done.
I think Brooklyn probably gets lost in the shuffle here in terms of historically and even in this season, because it's Helger's final ride and Aubrey's clearly the next great player. It turns out that was right. But and let's not pretend that Brooklyn was a 20-point scorer, but she had probably biggest 20 points of her career in this game, and you clearly needed every single one of them. I think, though, that she does get lost a little bit, but she was such a steady player. And along with you, who had seen the basement floor, perhaps, of the women's basketball program, she had been there along with you, and then gets to experience this high of winning a NEAC championship.
Yeah, Brooklyn embodied what Doug talked about, never getting too high, never getting too low. She started every game in her career but one, and that one was just because she had to go to a funeral for her family and made it back just right before tip-off. Obviously, we didn't know she was going to be Untitled, so couldn't put her in the book. Felt terrible for that, but she was just so steady at it. She's an unbelievable defender. I still use some of her clips now to this day. And I just think defensively and then offensively, she didn't turn the ball over a ton. Positive assist turnover ratio in her career, and her ability to shoot the three is really what changed it for her. She was obviously really steady, just great for us. But as the years went on, her ability to shoot the three changed the game. And I mean, in the championship, she's 5 of 12, which in a game where it's hard to score, and they were timely. I think she made 4 in the second half. They were timely baskets, like the one I mentioned earlier. And then she had another one. She just caught the ball and just let it fly, like completely out of rhythm, but she was feeling it. So
she had a great support system with her family. I don't think that they missed a game, and they don't live close. No. And it was a great thing to have her experience that with her too. And we talked a little bit earlier about it, but 4 players starting and playing every single game. I mean, that doesn't happen ever. Right. And this group was able to do that. And 2 of the players we talked about, Heilemann and Helger, to my knowledge, played every game of their other sport as well. So we're talking about mid-August for preseason, for fall, to second week of March. That's durability that we don't see.
Yeah, and we made some adjustments to our practice schedule at that point. Sure. I mean, we pretty much by mid-January we only practiced the day before a game. I mean, it was a little unorthodox. We caught a little bit of flack for it, but it was what we had to do to keep our kids healthy. Because at the end of the day, like if we're not healthy, if we're not fresh, like it just wasn't going to work. And especially with the makeup we had. And I love this team with the matchups we had pretty much in every game. I don't want to say we were ahead of our time because it wasn't necessarily planned this way, but with Aubrey's versatility at the 4, teams had a hard time guarding her. Sarah's versatility at the 3, the amount of space we played in, we had to be as fresh as possible. And I think that that's where we never practiced long. And we at that point of the year only went the day before a game because we just tried to be as fresh as possible. We felt we could prep them well enough with film and with a scout than the reps on the floor. And a lot of that was experience, but they were all about it.
And so I don't mean to end on the low, but it was a great experience getting to play Messiah in the NCAA Division III national tournaments, our only game ever. I'm not going to sit here and rewrite history and pretend that we were in the game for very long, but it was a good experience for our team. It was a good experience for our program and our school. I remember being very crowded behind us. Everyone went. The lasting image, I mean, obviously you've had plenty of opportunities now in higher elevation in tournaments and things like that, but that first time being in a national tournament game must have been special for you and the group, considering how the group had been together for so many seasons.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. It was special. We're actually getting them together tonight on Zoom to get everybody back together for first time since we played that game, to be honest with you. It created this sense of validity to what we were doing. And then as we all know, like it creates a new standard. And I haven't been back since, to be honest, in my career. I mean, we were supposed to go this year and everything happened. And it was truly special. It's something you just think so fondly of. The result obviously wasn't what we wanted, but the beauty of the NCAA tournament is it comes quickly, and then the bad part is it ends very quickly. I mean, it happened like that. But things you think so fondly of, you earn the right to be in that tournament, be on the national stage, go up against these other teams that have won in their respective leagues. And it just meant so much to the school. I mean, that time we were the second team in school history to go to the national tournament. So it meant so much to the school. It meant so much to the program. And as you alluded to earlier, it just gave momentum for the program for the rest of the decade. And I coming up close a couple of times, obviously the following year, with a chance to get there. But it just did so much for the school, for the program, and for these kids. It gave them a memory that they'll never forget. I mean, I still remember everything about it. So.
Absolutely.
I love the fact that it was at Messiah too. So a lot of our own students could go and be at that game, and you truly did have a tremendous amount of support. And then I also remember being at that game and Messiah being really classy because we didn't have a lot of depth, and he could have ran that score up really bad, but he was a classy coach on the other side of the ball too, and that was just a great time up at Messiah College for that game. Obviously, you hope to win, but if you're not going to, our girls learned a lot, and what a tremendous experience.
Yeah, no, and Mike obviously does an unbelievable job at Messiah, but there are things too, like we looked at that we were learning too. I mean, his first game all year, we played media timeouts, and how do you manage the substitution pattern with breasts and all that stuff, and he did. I mean, we learned from him in the middle of the game. It was pretty interesting thing, but like you said, it's great to be at Messiah, and they were so classy and so respectful, and great to have our student body. I know we wanted to go to South Florida to get a little bit of a trip, but it's great to be down the road and have our fans there and let everybody enjoy that experience.
So, Adam, we're going to talk later in the podcast after you leave about some of our memories from 2012, 13. And I just wonder if, off the top of your head a little bit, perhaps, but anything from that year that you remember. Again, you worked in the administration with us, and a lot of game management, a lot of whatever is asked of you by the athletic director, that famous clause at the end of all of our contracts where it says any other duties assigned, you were the king of that for sure. But anything else that comes to mind, maybe even not from this year, but any of your time in there here at LBC?
Yeah, I think my career at LBC was other assigned duties, and I think that was almost my job title. You coach in the NCAA tournament, and then literally the next day you're setting up for a men's volleyball game and working the concession stand. Like I'll never forget that. I haven't been that tired in a long time, and it was just the experiences were so vast and unique that I'll never. I mean, we painted a fence one time. Like it's I don't know how much painting I did, but I was there, and you experience everything, and I think so fondly of that, and you use those skills in every other stop you have in your career. But I think, I mean, you mentioned it last week, Zach, and I texted you, like that baseball game, the 4 a.m. arrival with like 3 shop vacs and then the car's headlights on high beams so we could actually see what we were doing. And we realized 10 minutes in the shop vacs were a terrible idea, and it was
awful. What a terrible idea.
I think that's when we contemplated getting a helicopter to drive the field off.
Yeah.
So there was some of the.
Where were you getting the helicopter from?
Yeah, well, we didn't get that far, but
not the place we got the 3 shop vacs. I'll tell you that much.
It was an idea that was thrown out there, not by me, but it was an idea that was thrown out there. And what's funny is we had a minor league team in North Carolina one time that actually did that. And Zach, I think I sent you that picture. Like
you did. You sent me if it was great.
And I was like, this is unbelievable. This is actually a real idea. Then I remember like painting the top of the Horace Athletic Center, which I'm glad is still there, because like I had to set up a ladder. I had to walk across horizontally and then get a pole, and then you go to coach in the NCAA tournament. I mean, and anywhere in between. You brought up Greiser's goal. I remember that one vividly. You'll get to it next week, but the men's championships were fun to see and be a part of, and their rise as well. But at the end of the day, it's the kids, and I think again that's kind of why we're getting together tonight, both the 12-13 and 13-14 teams, and when you look at that, you have the impact. I mean, Shanice Smith's the one that comes to mind. She's married now. I mean, if you know her story, it's unbelievable how far she's come and grown, and just really been given unbelievable opportunity and life-changing, and that's what athletics does. And that's why
I think it's the best part of your story is just to go from freshman, sophomore, and I wasn't here for those years, but who thought he was going to play men's basketball, to someone who decided that there was another career path. But to your point, you've always kept the kids as your first priority, and I think that's something that maybe we overlooked when you were here, but certainly something that's evident to see in your rise throughout Division I sports here and now at Florida State. Is that's what your care has been, and you were the king, like you said, of all other duties assigned, but it wasn't a problem you always did it, and at the same time though made time for the girls and made time for the other coaches, and have been a great inspiration to them, and as well as some of our other coaches that we've had here too. I know a lot of them try to bounce ideas off of you, and you've kept those relationships, and I think that's something to be applauded. I hope that's something that people who are fellow alums with you, Bob, of course, but just really keep that at the forefront of their mind, how much you care for people's daughters. When you recruited them, when they came to campus and you gave them, hey, everyone give them that line, we're going to take care of your daughter. No one has meant it more than you when they've come through. So we really appreciate that for sure.
I appreciate that a lot. And we try and buy that here. Sue and Broker, unbelievable at that here. So it's fun to be a part of. But that's what it's all about at the end of the day. Because, I mean, we talked to just now, and we're getting the kids together tonight, and I remember all their stories. We talked to them frequently. I remembered nothing about that game until I rewatched it. And I think at the end of the day, that's the true testament. Like, I think you remember the kids, but until I watched it, there weren't much I remember about that game. So,
Adam, before you go here, why don't you give a quick synopsis of your journey, your career since you left LBC, because it's been pretty interesting, and you've had some pretty great experiences to get where you are today.
Yeah, no, I was at Zach mentioned, I was at LBC 2 years as a player, 2 years as a student assistant. Bob Sham gave me a job that, again, who knew what it was going to turn. I knew I always wanted to do it, but I didn't know where it was going to take me. And it was an opportunity I had to jump on. And I've always wanted to coach women's basketball, and I got that opportunity there for 2 years as a student. And then when Doug got hired, I was retained here as full-time. So I was there 8 years total, 4 as a full-time, 2 as a student assistant. Then I left after 13, 14 and went to Mount St. Mary's up in Northern Maryland as director of operations, and was there for a year. It was a good year, great experience for me. It was my wife and I moved in with my in-laws, so it was great for my marriage. But we got through it, and it was great. We grew so much. And then I went from there after a year to Campbell University in Bowie's Creek, North Carolina, just south of Raleigh, and had various roles there. I started as special assistant to the head coach. Then I went to director of player personnel, and then finished as director of scouting. And was there 4 years, and we had an unbelievable run. Had some really special teams there. They just won the championship this year, which is Coach Fisher he does an unbelievable job there. And they finally reached that this year, which is great. And then this past season was my first year at Florida State as video coordinator. And then this year, Coach Sue took a leave of absence, for take care of her mother for a year. So I've been moving to the assistant role here while keeping the video duties as well. So basically, I moved south. If you ever need to find me, just keep looking south. That's kind of where I end up. So
there's not too many more teams south of you, though.
Exactly. So
let me know about the Cuban national team when you take that.
Exactly. So we love it here. We love it here. Florida State's a special place, and I know I say that term a lot, but it really is a special place. So,
you know, and like Zach was saying, you really did put your heart into, and you do that now wherever you're at. You're putting your heart into it fully. But I love the fact that you have still stayed very connected to LBC, and even it's a testament that like you're getting together with an old team tonight, and I sure hope all those ladies show up, and I'm sure it'll be a great time of reliving old memories, laughing, and just some crazy times. That's for sure.
It'll be fun. That team all had special personalities. Like, they were all fun. They were just a fun group to be around. So we're looking forward to that tonight. That's for sure.
Yeah,
that's great. Adam, thanks so much for joining us. I know you got to head out, so I really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you down the road. And go Noles.
Yeah, go Noles. That's right. I appreciate you guys. Obviously, we're all close. Bob did my wedding. I mean, I think that's a testament to how special LBC is. And I appreciate all you guys are doing, and looking forward to watching you play, hopefully in January.
Sounds great.
Yeah, we're hoping to see you on some national TV coverage too.
Hey, hopefully we'll get a schedule here soon, and hopefully you can watch us play.
There we go.
Great. Thanks guys.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam.
All right. So again, that was Adam Surguine, former women's basketball assistant coach, now down there at Florida State. And like we said to him, somebody who's always been forefront of some good coaching ideas, but also just a really, really good guy in terms of relationship building and keeping that there, and tells the LBC story really, really well. And if you're looking for people who are successful as alumnus from LBC, and somebody who really lives out what he learned here and had even before, it's, you don't have to look very far when you're talking about Adam. So really appreciate it coming on.
Yep, for sure.
So Bob, we're gonna just go back a little bit. We'll go to the fall here real quick and go back to what we normally do. Talk about women's basketball. There's we kind of joked about this. It was a little heavy on the women's side of sports here in 2012-13. This was kind of the only bad year for the men's soccer team in the whole decade. And bad is relative. I don't mean to say bad. It's probably a down year a little bit. The team was 4-10-3 overall, 2-6-2 in NEAC play. They had 6 1-goal losses that year. So this record could look very different if some of those games go the other way. Did not go to the NEAC playoffs this year, did not go to the NCCI East Region playoffs this year. The season was over October 20th. I couldn't believe that when I saw that, but I kind of remember that. And it's amazing because the women's soccer team played for another month almost. And it was just a weird kind of year. They did finish 2-0-1 in their final 3 games, 3-1-1 in the final 5 games. Miles Heron had 7 goals, 2 assists. Sean Westerland, 5 goals. Dwight Shelley, 3 goals. It was not a very offensively fire-powered team. But the next year, when we talk next week, that team did win the East Region. There's some spots here where, and there's some guys who are on the 2014 NEAC Finalist team. So there's some parts here that are going to come to play when we talk the next couple of weeks. But for some reason, this year's team just didn't do a whole lot. But again, those 6 1-goal losses loom kind of large in the final record.
Well, it's like you're saying, there just was not a ton of offense. There was a lot of protection of the ball, and obviously they didn't protect it well enough that they didn't get the wins. But it was hard to when your leading scorers are 7 goals, 5 goals, and 3 goals. You need a little bit more offensive production to be eligible for those playoff games so that you get those wins.
Correct. So that was that's men's soccer. We won't dwell there too long. I'm going to go to women's volleyball. We'll end with women's soccer since it's so, kind of important. Women's volleyball, 17 and, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so 17-19 overall for women's volleyball, 8-3 in the conference. Actually won their first ever NEAC playoff game, defeated SUNY IT 3-1 in the quarterfinals, then lost to Gallaudet in the semifinals. They also lost to Karen that year in the East Region final. The team went 8-2 in the middle of the year. Lauren Daniels, who was Lauren Donato last week, now she's Lauren Daniels, 425 kills, 404 digs, 58 blocks. Lauren Helger, 405 kills, 618 digs. That's the program record for most digs in a season. 45 aces. Hannah Metzler, this is her first year, 733 assists. And then Joanna Butala had 49 aces and 268 digs. I'm going to mention this a little bit later, but I had forgotten that the team was pretty good. It's an under 500 overall record, but that's kind of due to just playing a lot of matches against a pretty good schedule. The team was really good in conference play. Again, won that first playoff game. But these numbers from some of the people I just mentioned, they're really high on our all-time list. Now, 36 matches, you're going to get to some of those numbers, but 2 players with over 400 kills, we're not doing that anytime soon. It
was incredible to watch. Like you said, you kind of forget that they really are much better than what their overall record shows. And losing to Gallaudet in the finals of the NEAC or in the semis, Gallaudet is the team to beat, though. I mean, coming into the NEAC, they just dominated women's volleyball for those early years that we were a part of the NEAC.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's only the past couple of years, I would say 2 or 3 years ago, that they won every year. And it wasn't, like we said last week, not in 5 sets either. Like 3 sets really quick. The NEAC final was over by 2:00 most years on that final Sunday. So absolutely. But again, that team was better, I think, than we maybe remember. Women's cross country, 9th out of 12 at the NEAC Championships. They did win the Penn State Harrisburg Invitational for the second straight year. Elizabeth Floyer got 3rd that day. Kate Farnham 4th. The men's team got 10th out of 10 teams, the NEAC Championship. This is Ted Holbrook's first year. It was a good year of running by Michael Carlino. We're getting to cross country. You stick with us next couple of weeks. We're coming, coming for cross country. I promise. We're not going to gloss over them for the whole decade. We're getting there. I promise.
Yep.
But the team of the fall was the women's soccer team, 17-5 overall, 11-1 in NEAC play. They were the NEAC champions. We talked last week that they went to the NCAA tournament, kind of on a technicality, so to speak, with Penn State Abington not being a full member of the NCAA. But so they win the NEAC. They beat Penn State Harrisburg in the semifinals, then beat Penn State Berks in Reading 2-0 in the final before losing to Johns Hopkins at the NCAA tournament. We had lost to Berks 2-1 in the regular season. That was our first ever NEAC loss in the regular season. I had forgotten this until looking it up. We finished 17-5, but we were 0-2 to start the year. So 0-2 to start the year. We won 17 of 19 games before losing the final game of the year. Again, just going to read some ridiculous numbers in terms of scoring. Whitney Heisey, 20 goals, 11 assists. Monica Horning, 20 goals, 9 assists. Bethany Stein, 11 goals, 9 assists. Allie Brown, 8 goals and 17 points, but only 16 games played. We outscored teams 52-8 in the first half of games that year. So we talked a long time last week about women's soccer. And again, we can do that again here if you'd like. But this is a way different year, it feels like, than the year before. The scores aren't 9-0 and 6-0. There's a few of those mixed in there. But this was just an all-around good soccer team. Couple players had moved on. Allie had some injuries, but this is like peak Monica. This is Whitney in her final year. This is just dominance through. This is Evelyn Stauffer in the midfield, Karen Harkness in the midfield. This is just clamp down. You're not scoring, and watch our forwards. All right, we'll see you. It was methodical what they did to teams throughout the year.
Well, right. And when you look at goals scored, compare that to what the men's team did that year. These ladies were putting up points that were, yeah. The thing that I truly remember about that, winning the NEAC championship at Berks, in the next couple of years, though, they become the dominant women's soccer team in the NEAC. They are just.
I'm pretty sure this is the last year that Berks doesn't win the NEAC.
Yeah. But winning that championship game, you and I were both up at that game, I believe. Yep. I know I was. And it was hard because we didn't even really get to celebrate, because right at the end of the game, there was a Berks player that went down with an injury, and the ambulance had to come. And you really felt bad. You wanted to celebrate, but you also wanted to show respect. And our girls did a great job of doing that. And so did the fans and everything. But it was hard, you win this championship game on the road, but that was just tough. And then I know when they went down to Johns Hopkins for the NCAA tournament, again, the girls showed improvement over learning from the first year experience. They didn't lose by many goals in this tournament appearance. But it was a great learning experience for them. And Doug and Ken are just characters of coaches, like two extreme men of one very just the normal coach, and then the other one, man, I love talking to Doug. He was just, what a character.
It was great. And they had such a good pulse of the team, just like Adam got done talking about him and Doug and the pulse. They had a great pulse of what the team needed, whether it's a day off, it's a lighter practice, or it's, hey, you know what, that was terrible yesterday, we're going hard today. And some of the practices, and Adam probably want to say, but we crushed a couple of those teams in women's basketball. And so, you're kind of like looking for a good practice the next day, because yesterday's game really wasn't that great of a workout. And there's some of those games mixed in here. You mentioned the game against Johns Hopkins, and then they're a really good program, and that team was really good. It was 2-0 at half. We were down 2-0, and they scored 2 goals in the last 11 minutes. So the score is 5-0, but 2 of those goals are in the final 11 minutes, and obviously they still count. but the shots weren't as bad as the year before. And like you said, there was some improvement. I think the team a lot of these players were moving on, Allie, Allie and Whitney and a couple other players. It was just a culmination of 3 great years. This is the end of that run. They had 50 wins in 3 years. It's just unheard of. And it was just regardless of the score, it was a celebration. I think to your point about kind of missing out on celebrating at the end of the NEAC, and I will say too, and I'm not sure we ever made this public. I don't think we did because there's no reason to it in the moment. But 8 years later, you can bring it up. We got a really nice letter written to us by Penn State Berks and the NEAC for the way that we handled post-game things after that, with everything that transpired there with that injured player who did turn out to be okay, by the way. It was kind of a nice thing, and just a testament to that team, that staff, those girls, their parents, things like that. It was really a nice day. There's another game in there. We lost to Swarthmore that year. Again, it's hard to you win 17 games. I'm bringing up a loss, but lost to Swarthmore 2-1. I think that's kind of when we realized, and it was 1-1 with 15 minutes to go. And again, we got crushed in shots, but that team's ability to stay in games against better opponents, that was kind of like a really eye-opening thing, that this team is really good. I mean, that was a good Centennial Conference team, and we played really well against Swarthmore that day. And again, we won the East Region, beat Baptist, actually beat them this time. There was no snow involved this time. We actually beat them. So again, just a great year. Just a really nice finish to a 3-year run. And then the team is still good next year and the year after. And again, like we said last week, we've never missed the NEAC playoffs in soccer, but this felt different. This is the only NEAC championship we've ever won, same as women's basketball. It just felt like it was different than the last week's team we talked about. Last week's team was, let's see how many we can score. We did it that way. Not to say the defense wasn't good, but the offense was so good that it really it had nothing to do. This felt like a well-rounded soccer team. And the program was good. We were getting recruits, again, local, far away, Christian school, public school. And it was just a really cool program. The way they came together was a really nice year there in 2012.
Well, and that leads up to some of the stuff as we head into the winter sports. Ken Crawl, as a part-time coach, he really was setting up a foundation for women's soccer that just helps them for the years to come as we continue to move forward with that program and see it really grow and develop.
Absolutely. So heading into the winter, we talked women's basketball. Men's basketball, we're not going to talk about very long for 2012. If you're looking for men's basketball programming, join us the next 3 weeks. We're going to be heavy on it. So we're going to do them a favor and not talk about it this week. And we finished 5-21 overall. 3-11 in the NEAC. We actually were 4-22 and got a win following the year. Baptist Bible had used an ineligible player, so we got a 2-0 win during the season. So, all right. Dan Carl averaged 13 points a game. Keith Keltner, 12 points. This is the freshman year for CJ Dunson and Dre Perry. This is the first year of Marshall Tagg. We're going to hopefully have a chance to talk with him in the coming weeks about the program. We're going to do him a solid and not talk about this year. It was just it was a major transition year. New players, new coach. The NEAC was actually pretty good. I mean, not that they aren't good. There's some really good teams in the NEAC. That did not help in terms of what we were trying to accomplish. So it was just kind of a lost year. And considering all the success that's coming in the next couple of weeks that we do this, it's okay. So, but this was definitely a down year for the men's basketball program.
It was a down year, or another way of looking at it, it was a growing year. It was a foundational year of Marshall coming in, and I mean, that's probably the biggest thing. He had different systems, and the guys had to learn them, and it didn't go super well that year, but it does really start becoming, like you said, the next 3 years. Wow. I mean, the men's program really moves forward there.
Yeah. And I think we would all take the 2012-13 year if we knew the next 3 years were coming. So it's one of those things where you're willing to deal with that. And I'm actually going to talk when we do the categories about the biggest advancement. I'm going to come back to men's basketball. So there definitely are things there that are propelling LBC in a larger sense that maybe people didn't know about at the time. So last winter sport, men's volleyball. 16-16 overall, 5-0 in the NEAC. We did lose in the NEAC final to Cuca 3-1, although NEAC final is a really loose term. There was like 4 teams, and there was not an automatic bid, so it kind of meant something, but kind of didn't really mean anything. So it was a strange year. We did have some good wins against some good teams. We also had a lot of wins over not good teams. We had 3 wins against Gallaudet, who dropped the program, I think, that year or the year after. Casanova, we had a couple wins. They didn't have the program very much longer. So it's a strange year. Joey Brennan, 244 kills, 101 blocks. I'm pretty sure that's the program record. Miles Heron, who we talked about men's soccer, he played men's volleyball as well, 209 kills, 321 assists. Mitch Demko, 206 kills. Alex Baum, I'm going to get to him a little bit too. 167 kills, 690 assists, 59 aces. There was 6 players with 100 or more kills. The team was actually pretty good in terms of statistics. We did play well against some good opponents as well. It was just sort of a strange year. Evelyn Long was the head coach of this year's team. They did play well. The NEAC final was kind of a bummer, but it was a good year for sure for that program, especially after some down years. We're going to have a couple more down years after this year, but then it's going to be really, really good. So again, if you're going to stick with us for men's basketball, stick with us for men's volleyball and cross country too, as we get to the later part of the decade.
Yeah. I'm just, I pulled up the article from that championship game and everything, and looking at the team picture there's a bunch of characters in that group, and they worked hard, and Evelyn was able to do something with a bunch of players that, it'd be interesting to know who would start and who wouldn't start on a team today where the men's volleyball program is at, because Jade obviously has been able to start recruiting some solid volleyball players, but Evelyn did well with the players that she had. A lot of talent on that team, and in fact, Alex Bond is a part of that team, and he's now out coaching in Grand Rapids. We talked about that last week, and just a real solid group of men on that team.
Absolutely. To the spring, again, we can gloss over pretty much most of this. Baseball was 7-24 overall. They're 1-13 in the NEAC. Lost to Karen 16-13 in the NEAC, in the East Region final. That game I remember that game. We had split with Karen earlier in the year, and they did some weird stuff during the East Region final to kind of like slow the game down, and they were just doing a lot. It was aggravating. I remember being frustrated. Anyway, it was just a weird season. We were 2-13 in the final 15 games, 0-8 to end the year. This is the first year of Matt Talercio. He hit 388, 11 home runs, 38 RBIs. Last year for Frank DeFilippo, hit 383, 31 hits, 23 runs batted in. Nate Long hit 356, 37 hits. Here's one for you, Bob. I think you'll enjoy. Nate Horn led the team, 2.45 ERA, 14 innings pitched. Good year out of the bullpen for him, but just sort of a down baseball year. We were in some of the games, but we gave up a lot of runs that year, and had some power in the middle of the lineup and not a ton surrounding it. So it was sort of a strange year.
It is a strange year, and not a ton to be said about it, but again, some solid players in there, and some opportunity to continue to grow.
Absolutely. Women's lacrosse finished 4-12, 3-6 in the conference. I was the coach. This is my final year as the coach. We won our final 2 games, 3-2 over the final 5. Lost 2 1-goal games. The game, though, for the season, I think you'll probably remember it, Bob. I can't imagine you weren't there. Beat Rosemont 11-9 in the snow on the old field. Didn't play the final 10 minutes, I believe, because the snow got so bad, but definitely picked up that win. I remember pretty cold, pretty snowy, that's for sure. Whitney Heisey, 79 goals. Danielle Good, 11 goals. Kylie Hallman, 9 goals. Nicole Valentino, 7 goals. Annie Hoover, 5 goals. Kind of like the men, not a ton of scoring. Whitney was great, but wasn't a whole lot of second options for some of those games. I remember that, but 4-12, it was an improvement over the year before in terms of wins, but certainly appreciated handing that off following the year to get a better coach in there too, could recruit a couple players. And Amber Dooley is going to be the coach the following year for a season, and then Sherry will take over, and she's done some good things with the program for sure. So women's tennis, 3-10, 1-6 in the NEAC. Kayla Noctegal, 6 singles wins. Casey Scott, Carmen Noctegal, and Tiffany Wolf all had 4 singles victories that year as well. The best team of the spring, though, men's tennis, 7-7 overall, 2-4 in the NEAC, 3 straight wins to open the year. Jeremy Davis, 11-3 in singles play, 7-2 in doubles play with Alex Coe. Alex also won 8 singles matches. Ted Holbrook, 8 singles matches, and then Dan Soden and Alex Darris, 5 singles wins. That men's tennis team was very good, 7-7 overall. And now we're going to talk about kind of this towards the end here, but really good guys on that team as well. We just talked about men's volleyball in terms of guys who have taken the LBC mantra with them. And there's a ton of good guys in this program.
Yeah, when you say Jeremy Davis, I just kind of smile and start kind of laughing. He is one of the most encouraging, most positive young men that I know, and he's married. I think has 2 kids. They actually just moved back to Pennsylvania. He was a youth pastor out in Wisconsin for a couple of years, but they've moved back to PA and are doing a church here now. And but yeah, those other guys that you mentioned, Dan Soden, Alex Darris. Yeah, a lot of great guys there.
Absolutely.
Alex Coe, Ted Holbrook. Yep, it was good.
So that's a kind of quick recap of the seasons. We're going to add a sport next year for softball. So we'll get to softball next year for the first time as we kind of embark further into the decade. Homecoming for 2012-13 was October 6th. I think that was the only time we ever had it in October. Why did we have it in October?
I have no idea why it got moved. Maybe because homecoming can come really fast if the school year starts right almost in September. And so maybe that was one of the reasons that got moved that year.
The only thing I can think of was the library finishing. Did we hold it for? I couldn't remember because that's the year the library opened, right?
I think you're right. I couldn't tell you that anymore.
I don't know.
But
I'm just wondering.
yes.
I'm just wondering if we gave them an extra week to finish or something like that. I can't remember. So
yeah, I just know. Yeah, and it might have been also we were trying not to compete with Cairn and their homecoming schedule because of just we wanted to play some of our Christian schools that from back in the day, but we've gotten beyond that at this point now too.
Right.
That we generally are playing a NEAC team, and we did play NEAC teams that year. So
right. So we played Penn State Harrisburg. The women won 2-1. Allie Brown, Monica Horning had goals, and then we lost on the men's side 4-0. Though we outshot Harrisburg 14-12. I'm not sure if that's a good stat or bad stat, but nevertheless, that was homecoming. We talked about the teams who won championships, soccer and basketball on the women's side, both the NEAC and the East region. We gave you some stats from our current coaches, Frank and Allie as well. So moving to the categories, first one, best game. There's a couple here just to kind of mention. We actually did talk about a lot of them with Adam on the basketball side. I mentioned that 45-31 Gallaudet game. We shot 26% and won. We were leading 27-11 at halftime, so that's always fun. The women's basketball NEAC final over Cuca that we talked about. And then the NCAA tournament game, despite losing our first and only one on the women's basketball side. Women's soccer, again, the NEAC final we talked about. The East region final we kind of glossed over, but beat BBC 2-1. I have a game, though, for you, Bob. Men's soccer, September 7th versus Morrisville State. We tied 3-3. We played the final 30 minutes down a player because Wes Smith got a red card, I think, for nothing egregious, just I think it was a handball maybe in the box or something of the sort. We scored twice in the final 30 minutes to tie the game, and we were outshot 33-12, but had a tie after 110 minutes and played the final, I guess actually 40 minutes down a player because we would have played overtime periods there. So pretty cool to come away
Yeah.
with a tie in a season that was kind of lost. So
Yeah, a lot of great opportunities there for solid games, but yeah, women's basketball probably wins
yeah,
that category
I
in
think so.
many ways, just
I think so. Just
because of how they played. You know, as I was looking at the box score for the NEAC final game against Cuca, we only shot 25% for the first half in that game,
yeah,
and you know, it's not like the girls figured out how to win that game, and between Doug and Adam coaching them and them going out and executing, it was a real exciting game, that's for sure.
absolutely. And the crowd was great. That's one of the first times we had the gym that loud. I mean, we're gonna have other examples going forward, but to Adam's point, I mean, the gym is loud when one person's in there, and when you get 500 people in there, or whatever it was loud, and our students had embraced NEAC play and what it meant to win the NEAC. I think women's soccer helped with that a lot, but it was
Yeah,
loud. It was, the sense of school pride was on display in a lot of ways. And if the game's in Cuca, do we win? I have no idea, but I know it certainly helped that we were at LBC that day for sure. So
yeah, yep.
um, next category is biggest advancement for LBC. This is where I'm going to bring up the men's basketball team and Marshall specifically. So he became our first full-time head coach that season, kind of paved the way to get other full-time head coaches here. For me, anyway, just knowing and being in those conversations, and you were in some of those conversations as well, but the idea of having a full-time head coach dedicated to one sport, that was Pete's direction. That was his dream for athletics. And we finally get it realized here. We're not going to prove it with the record on display for the men's team this year, but LBC finally made a decision that full-time head coaches, or at least to start anyway, were the way to go to attract more people to the institution. And this leads us to, you can go down the list, but TJ for baseball, Leah Sipe for women's soccer, and every part-time coach who is replaced from this point on, for the most part, by a full-time head coach in some capacity or another. The following year, we're going to have Doug leave women's basketball, and Rachel Steinberger is coming in. And these are all full-time head coaches for their sport. And this is the first year for that. And it's a huge thing for LBC going forward.
Yeah, it really does. It changes the amount of student athletes that we have, and we see enrollment go up. I mean, it's amazing. This past year, there was over 300 student athletes in at LBC, and before that, I mean, we were doing well, but it makes such a big difference when a coach is really dedicated to finding a mission fit student for the college that's going to come in and be an impact player on their athletic teams. And obviously, we love filling rosters and everything, but having coaches that are committed to being the best and doing their best and having their teams do the best, it's pretty incredible to watch. So yes, Marshall coming on and being the first full-time head coach, being really focused on a sport, and he has other responsibilities in the athletic department, but it was really cool to see that happen. So what a great opportunity for LBC athletics, for the program just to grow. And again, there's still a number of sports teams that we don't have yet. And like you said, the following year, now we're starting to add some of our next teams. I don't know, when did Pete have his idea of 20 teams by 2020?
Oh, that was probably in the middle of the decade, 15 or 16.
Okay.
The idea,
Yep.
that came about. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is a great first step. And I know because Marshall was successful, we were able to parlay that into other sports and other programs going forward. Best memory is the next category. I think there was the NEAC final for women's basketball for me. It was our first time hosting basketball. All three of the games were really good that weekend. The final was obviously great. I have it for you here, Bob. We hosted the women's basketball or men's basketball NEAC Final Four for a lot of the rest of the decade. So we have women's basketball this year. Next week, when we talk for 13-14, we hosted both. 14-15, we hosted the men. 15-16, we hosted both. And then 17-18, we hosted the men. So we get really good at this throughout the decade. And this is our first crack at it. And hopefully we did pretty well. I don't remember specifics. I looked at the game program and kind of got some remembrances off of that. But, I hope that people appreciate the fact that we hosted 2 basketball tournaments twice in the middle part of the decade, and how difficult that was to get 8 teams in here and play 4 games on Saturday. And definitely the last semifinal started at 8 o'clock or 8:30, and to turn it around the next day. And anyway, again, that's not to brag. That's just to tell you everyone what goes into hosting these things. And this was our first crack at it, and those are good memories. Those are long days, but man, so many people had to help. So many people had to work and get those for us. And I mean, you and I were living here those weeks and doing different things. And I mean, you and I have been pretty good friends for most of the decade of just working together and in and out. But even some of these years you didn't work here and you still were in and out and helping and doing different things.
Yeah.
And it was a major team effort to do this, and it's a really good memory just to show kind of how well everyone can work together when there's a common goal. And I think we did a good job for the NEAC those weekends. So
yeah, we pretty often would get some emails and notes from folks saying, man, you guys are running a great tournament, and we're really thankful for that. So not to brag about that, but it's sure good to hear that, like, people see that and everything. I will tell you this though, Zach, there's nothing worse than hosting the tournament and the home team loses in a semifinal. It is so hard to be motivated to do the rest of the games that weekend then, because you have no vested interest, but those teams expect you to give them as much credit and opportunity. And then, like, even if we lose in the finals, it's really hard to celebrate that other team as well, because they're on your floor, they're celebrating, and it's hard, but you do your best and you make the most of the opportunity. So it is way more fun though to host than having to travel somewhere.
Oh, I couldn't agree with that more. And the best part about this, and I looked this up because I was curious about that, because we did do that for baseball with East Region stuff and a couple of things. But all these years that we hosted this stuff, our team never lost in the semifinal. Like that was the best part. I mean, we did lose in the final, and that was terrible. But we'll get to that next week. But really, we hosted the final for 13-14. We lost both of those games. So now we're going to talk next week. The men's team, if we're being really honest with ourselves, we weren't beating Morris for that day, but it was a really good game. But there's other ones, women's basketball next week and men's basketball the following week and men's volleyball later in the decade. Like, wait, is the other team happy? Like, wait, we lost. Like, it was really bad. But to your point, it's a fun experience, and it's here. We get to kind of show off LBC, and everyone who isn't from LBC hates our gym, and everyone who's for LBC loves our gym, and it's just fun to be a part of that. So, who won the year?
We've actually hosted quite a few NEAC things. Cross country's been fun to host as well. So,
cross country is fun to host because there's someone else doing the timing. All right, yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
but having that many runners there, wow, it's incredible to see all the teams that come in for that. So
absolutely. So who won the year? Our female, I have Lauren Helger, Whitney Heisey, and then Aubrey Folger, just kind of to start out her career. Lauren Helger was the NEAC Final Four MVP that year for basketball. We kind of gave her stats earlier. And then Whitney had, again, a great season offensively for both soccer and lacrosse. They were our 2 nominees last year. This is their final year for both of them. We just don't see stats like this anymore. I think the game has changed a little bit in terms of some of their stats. And could they get those stats today? Maybe. Some of those games, definitely. But just a really great year for probably 2 of our best 2-sport athletes to ever do it here at LBC. And it's just a great year for both of them. And their teams were successful, and they were pretty humble of the way they went about it, and I think made other people better as well on the field. So, and then Aubrey, we're going to get to her over the next several weeks, but this is the start of the best women's basketball career we've ever had. So she's
So, yep. So this is Helger's senior year, right?
yes, and Whitney's.
So and so not only does she win there, but here's a memory for you. Do you remember senior night?
Absolutely.
A senior night of women's basketball. Helger actually, not only do we honor her as a senior, but she gets proposed to in the middle of the floor by her now husband, Mike Turner. So
Andrew Turner.
that was, or Andrew Turner, excuse me. I got the last name right. Let's go there at least.
Just turn one of the Turner boys next time. That sounds
yeah,
great.
that's right. So that was kind of
a
fun.
great memory. I remember Andrew I think he kind of like asked a question, I was poking around like, hey, when's senior night? And, I'm kind of thinking this because Andrew's older than me, but we went to the same high school. And then I did go to high school with his brother, Mike, who you mentioned, who's married to another alum. On her there. So he kind of poking around. I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess that would be if you really wanted to, we could kind of make it work and whatever. And he goes, okay, well, I'll get back to you. And then he kind of kept looking at it. And we said, okay. And then he kind of kept looking at it. And we said, okay, we can do this. I could take pictures and whatever. So, yeah, it was a great memory. So absolutely. Male, who won the year? Miles Heron. We mentioned him, leading scorer in men's soccer. Had a really good year in men's volleyball. Matt Talercio, good baseball year. Jeremy Davis, good tennis year. Again, we don't really do winners, but if I had Alex Bond, this is his final year, I believe, with the program. He had 167 kills, 690 assists. We mentioned that, but you kind of had to be here to see him play. He was really good. You mentioned who could play on the team from this year's team to the current team.
Yeah.
Jade would find a spot for him. I know it. I don't know where. He kind of sets, and then he could also hit. He was a good defensive player. I really don't know where he would play in this current on this current year's team, but he was really good, and he was a good leader. He was a good leader then. I'm not surprised at all he's the head coach and running a program at all. He was just a really well-rounded person, a really well-rounded player, and he just seemed older and wiser than everyone else playing. I don't know. It was just you got that right away. That did not take any time at all. You knew that from the minute he got here.
Yep. And you know what? He talks about that. Cornerstone just did a podcast. I don't know if you follow that or not, but
I see it on his.
Yeah. I listened to the coach's conversation. I think it's something like that. I don't know if it's their SID or somebody who's doing it out there at Cornerstone, but their very first one that they did was with Alex. Mm-hmm. And it was great to hear him talk about the experience of coming in from a different college, getting used to Lancaster Bible College and realizing, hey, there's more to life than just volleyball, but I love volleyball and it's become my passion, but I'm going to use it for my platform. And he has not only taken that from here, he did it with some of his high school assistant coaching, and now as a head coach at a first-year program. So if you want, look up Cornerstone University. It's in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and you could definitely find Alex talking about his experience and who he is and what he's been learning. But I totally agree with you. You wouldn't know it because he was fairly quiet, but he went out and he worked hard.
Absolutely. So lastly here, before we finish for the week, one thing you could go back and change for the 2012-13 year. I think I did enjoy the women's basketball ride, but as we kind of foreshadowed, I kind of thought they were going to be good for a really long time, or not. They were good. I thought they were going to win more championships, and so I think maybe I would have enjoyed it a little bit more if I'd known that we were still going to be stuck on one, perhaps.
Yeah.
So.
I agree. I think we did expect them to win more, and they've been in playoffs. They come close so many times, but they just don't know how to finish and do that. But yeah, I think I expected, like you said, that they would be winning more NEAC titles than what they have at this time.
And I appreciated what Adam said, and he put it into words better than I maybe could, because he was a little more, obviously he knew the team better. But this year's team, this 12-13 team, had an extra gear that the other teams that we're going to talk about coming in the next couple of weeks, just not that they didn't want to have it, they wanted it, they just could not get there. Because the team well, it's the following year, but next week that we're going to talk about, I think is better than this team. The 13-14 team, I think, is better. It's Aubrey as a sophomore. It's Shanice. It's Katie. Like, you're talking about prolific scorers in program history, but there were these games where they just couldn't do it. Now, the team next week is going to go to the NCCAA Division II, and they get third, and they're like a bucket away from winning the national title for NCCAA. But the NEAC Finals, the game you remember, and they just couldn't stop one player, and they couldn't get to that next level the way this 12-13 team did. The 14-15 team, 15-16, these teams that were really, really good and just couldn't get to that next level, and the other teams did. And I think that's one thing that Adam spoke so well about, is just this team had something, and they figured it out the first day, the first game, that they had this gear that they didn't have to use it all the time, but if they needed to use it, they could find it and had it. And I'm here to tell you that I think a lot of that was Lauren Helger and Brooklyn Wilson, and just being in the program that long and wanting it so badly, they were able to find that gear. But I think that's something that these next couple of years teams were missing, perhaps.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they were all steady. That entire team of ladies was just very steady and didn't let a lot of emotion get to them at all. And they did really well. And they had fun too, I think.
Absolutely. That's for sure. You're right on there. So a couple other things, just we talked a little bit about the women's volleyball team. I think I didn't realize that they were that good. Probably should have done more on the women's volleyball team, but women's soccer dominated the fall, and kind of women's volleyball flew under the radar a little bit. And then men's tennis, probably should have covered them a little bit better. Like you said, there's a lot of great guys on that team. They had some good wins throughout the year. Probably should have done a little bit better job covering them as well that spring. But yeah, 2012-13 is a weird year. There in the sense that there was two really, really good teams, women's basketball, women's soccer, and the rest of the teams just kind of struggled on the scoreboard. But that takes away nothing. And men's volleyball is pretty good too. Takes away nothing for the people that were here. You've got some great men and women who are here. You've got some great characters who were here. We had a lot of fun. This is the one of the better years of having fun, having a good time, and really kind of, again, some more foundational stuff of what LBC is going to be the rest of the decade, but specifically with the head coaches for sure.
Yep. Yeah. You really do see this is a start. And I think, like, women's basketball going to the NCAA tournament, and while women's basketball didn't get to go to it the next year and going to the NCCAA, we're turning the corner here of saying, yeah, it's great to go play extra games in the NCCAA tournaments and everything. It's just still not the national recognition of what playing in a Division III national tournament is truly about. And it was rough that first year with women's soccer because they wanted to be in Florida. And I think in the end, they realized they had much better competition. And yes, it's one and done and you're out. But we do realize that there is a greater opportunity. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
So
that's perfect.
It's great to see the teams growing, the athletic department growing, and we have a lot. Yeah, we have a lot to be thankful for. So, yep.
Right on. So, all right. Well, that's 2012-13. That's in the books, and next week we'll be coming back with the following year, 2013-14. Some good teams for sure coming up. A whole new band of characters coming through that we're excited to talk about, and I hope to have another great guest as well next week. So, Bob, thank you. Enjoy your week, and we'll see you next week. And as always, Bob, go Chargers, go.
All right. See ya.
See ya.